A farmer woke up early in the morning and went to the barn with great anticipation, as he was expecting the birth of the piglets from his favorite sow, Hermelinda. For months, Dom Nemesio had taken care of Hermelinda and allowed her to meet various male pigs in the hope that they would finally have offspring. This was a cause for joy, as he and his wife had faced difficulties in having children. When Dom noticed the swelling in Hermelinda's belly, he couldn't contain his happiness and rushed home to share the news with his wife, Faustina. As he entered the kitchen, where Faustina was preparing breakfast, Hermelinda followed, searching for food in the drawers. Faustina barely noticed the pig, as she was more interested in her husband's radiant smile. "What's going on, dear? You came in a hurry and didn't even give me a chance to prepare your breakfast." "It's still a few minutes away from being ready," Faustina commented. Dom Nemesio replied enthusiastically, "I have wonderful news, Faustina. Hermelinda is expecting piglets." All the pigs that came to visit her finally succeeded. Dom Nemesio reflected on his friend Pancho's words and finally replied, "You're right, Pancho. We could consider the idea of selling some of the piglets. It would be a good deal, and so we could share the joy with other families in town." As he walked back home, the farmer had in mind how to organize the sale of the future piglets. Although he had devoted a lot of time and care to Hermelinda, he knew that sharing happiness with others would be rewarding. Additionally, with the extra money, he could make some improvements to his farm. Upon arriving home, Don Nemesio shared Pancho's suggestion with Faustina. She enthusiastically agreed and said, "It could be a great idea, dear. Not only will we share the joy with others, but we could also use the funds to improve our farm." Don Nemesio smiled and embraced his wife. "Thank you for understanding, Faustina. I believe it will be a positive step for us and for Hermelinda." The following days were filled with excitement and preparations. Don Nemesio talked to other friends and interested buyers of piglets. He planned to organize a market at the farm as soon as the piglets were born and strong enough to be separated from their mother. As the months passed, anticipation grew both in Don Nemesio's family and in the town. Everyone eagerly awaited the arrival of the new farm members, knowing they would bring joy to more than one home. Months went by, and the town's anticipation for Hermelinda's piglets' birth grew more and more. Dom Nemesio was determined to speak with potential buyers and had already agreed on prices for each piglet. Upon returning to his modest farm, he shared with Faustina what he had done in the town. Dom Nemesio explained, "The villagers are interested in buying the piglets. By around 4 months, until Hermelinda gives birth, we can profit from selling the piglets." Faustina, although not a fan of the sow, agreed and said, "At least we'll get some benefit from her." "I'm happy for you, dear." Don Nemesio's routine included visiting Hermelinda's pen daily, feeding her, and measuring her belly, which grew every week. The farmer was excited about the idea of having piglets to sell and thought about how many he had already sold. "I already have 8 sold. I hope she gets pregnant again so we can keep 1 or 2. However, all this new routine was bothering his wife, Faustina. Since Hermelinda came into their lives, the pig had become the center of attention for her husband. Faustina felt that Don Nemesio was paying more attention to the pig than to her, his wife of almost 2 decades. While Hermelinda roamed freely around the house, Faustina felt uncomfortable. She watched with displeasure as Don Nemesio allowed the pig to share his food and even sleep in the house, instead of staying in the pigsty, as was customary. Faustina finally couldn't contain her dissatisfaction and said to her husband, "I definitely don't understand how you can let the pig eat from your plate and allow her to sleep inside the house. She should stay in her pigsty, not inside the house. Animals have their place, and it makes me feel jealous. Since the pig arrived, I feel like you prefer her to me. Also, don't blame me for not having children yet. We haven't been lucky, and we're at a stage in life where having children is not so simple anymore. I feel uncomfortable with this situation. So, I'm going to withdraw for a while." With these words, Faustina got up from the table and left, leaving Don Nemesio reflecting on the tension that had arisen in their home due to his affection for Hermelinda. Dom Nemesio, who had always longed to have children with his wife, lamented that they had never succeeded. He believed that fate had denied them the opportunity to be parents. Therefore, the arrival of Hermelinda's piglets was a consolation for him. He planned to keep one of the piglets and take care of it as if it were another family member. Such was his affection for the little pig. Faustina did not understand this deep connection between her husband and the pig. To her, she only saw the attention that Don Nemesio gave to the animal, often forgetting her own presence. After the conversation, Faustina retired to the master bedroom, where she removed the mattress from the bed in search of something she had kept hidden from her husband's eyes, a box of contraceptive pills. She took these pills daily to prevent pregnancy, a decision she had made since the beginning of their marriage. For Faustina, the idea of being a mother simply did not appeal to her. It seemed to her that children made too much noise, and she couldn't stand the mess she saw in her friends' houses, dealing with their respective children every day. After this conversation, the couple continued with their lives in apparent normalcy. During the day, Don Nemesio took care of Hermelinda's pregnancy, which was progressing, while at night the pig rested at the feet of her owner, while he read in the living room and his wife embroidered in her armchair. Months passed, and Hermelinda's belly continued to grow. Don Nemesio continued to do business with the townspeople, who, upon seeing the pig's growth, offered more and more money for the future piglets. Many of them paid in advance to secure one of the piglets, and Don Nemesio had already sold about 20. The farmer knew that after Hermelinda gave birth and nursed the litter, he would seek the male pigs again for her to get pregnant as soon as possible. The farm and the arrival of new piglets had become the center of his life and his main source of joy. Tension increased as the days passed and Hermelinda did not give birth. The villagers who had paid for their piglet were impatient, and Don Nemesio was aware of their concern. 3 months of gestation had passed, and the pig still had not given birth. The villagers began to approach, one by one, in the town, to inquire about Hermelinda's situation. Don Pancho dared to ask, "Sorry, Don Nemesio, have you not noticed that Hermelinda still hasn't had her piglets? I believe the gestation period has passed. It's possible she won't have piglets." Dom Antonio added, "It's strange. She's so big that she should have had the litter by now. Are you sure she's pregnant?" Dom Nemesio tried to reassure the villagers by ensuring that Hermelinda was pregnant and that the litter would arrive soon. He reminded them that sometimes births could be delayed and asked for patience. "Don't worry, friends," he said firmly. Don Pancho doesn't always keep his word. If he says Hermelinda will have piglets, then she will. We must trust him. However, when the 6th month of gestation arrived with no sign of piglets, the villagers were dissatisfied and could no longer be convinced to wait. They felt they had waited long enough and had lost their money. Furious, they demanded that Don Nemesio return the money to them. Don Nemesio found himself in a difficult situation, as he and his wife, Faustina, had spent the money they had received from selling the piglets. It was already the 7th month, and there were still no signs that Hermelinda had given birth. Her belly continued to grow as the days passed, and Don Nemesio was desperate due to the lack of piglets. It was 3 months overdue, and he knew he needed to fulfill his promise. The pressure from the villagers was increasing, making the situation unsustainable. One day, while Don Nemesio was in the living room of his house with Faustina, they heard a commotion outside the house. Faustina, looking through the window curtains, noticed a glow like fire coming from outside. "Look, dear, did you see and hear that?" she asked with concern, pointing outside. The couple approached the window to investigate the mysterious event that had interrupted their lives. Attention reached its peak. The villagers, tired of waiting for Hermelinda's piglets, decided to go to Don Nemesio's house to demand the money they had paid for the piglets that never arrived. When Don Nemesio and his wife, Faustina, stepped out onto the porch of their small farm, they were stunned to find themselves surrounded by enraged villagers. Many of them were accompanied by their families and armed with sticks and torches. The crowd demanded payment or the delivery of the piglets. The villagers shouted angrily, "Don Nemesio, we can't wait any longer. You must refund our money or deliver the sow. Let's go inside to compensate for our loss. Time is up." One furious villager accused, "This sow is not pregnant. She just fattened it up. There are no piglets in her belly. You must examine her better. If she looks pregnant but has no offspring, that's the work of the devil. We must expel her from the village before she brings misfortune." Another village elder joined the conversation with fear and said, "You're right. We must get rid of her. She's bad luck. We can't wait for her to bring misfortune to the village. We must go to the church to pray and protect ourselves." Don Nemesio tried to calm the villagers. "Wait, friends. We must give her a chance. I will call the veterinarian to examine my dear piggy. She has a swollen belly because of pregnancy, and that's why I was so excited. You just need to wait." Don Pancho, with evident anger, replied, "We're not convinced that you're not deceiving us, Nemesio. Many months have passed and no piglets. We're tired of waiting. You must hand over the sow at once. We'll make good use of her meat to compensate for our loss." Tension on Don Nemesio's small farm was palpable, and the crowd of villagers was determined to resolve the situation one way or another. They tried to approach him, but the veterinarian once again prevented them, suggesting that a more thorough assessment was still needed. Don Pancho interrupted the veterinarian. "This sow has been in her supposed gestation period for over 7 months. How much longer do we have to wait? These periods cannot be extended so much." The veterinarian replied, "It's certainly strange, but I need to conduct more tests to get clear answers. I ask you for just one more day, not months, just one day." The villagers and their families agreed to give the veterinarian one more day to find out what was happening with Hermelinda, but after that, Don Nemesio would have to settle accounts with them. The tension in the stable decreased slightly as everyone hoped to finally get answers. The villagers, promised a definitive answer the next day, gradually retired to their homes, leaving Don Nemesio worried. He wondered how he could return the money they had paid for the offspring. Moreover, he was worried that his beloved pig might be sick instead of pregnant. Hermelinda was his company and solace, and he would be very sad if something serious happened to her. As he headed to his room for some rest, Don Nemesio was still convinced that his sow was pregnant and had only delayed giving birth. His hope drove him to continue believing in it. His wife, Faustina, tried to console him. "Let's rest, Nemesio. Let the veterinarian take Hermelinda for examination tomorrow. We'll know what's happening, and besides the gases that swell her belly, the veterinarian will uncover the truth." Finally, Don Nemesio agreed and allowed the veterinarian to take Hermelinda for examination. The hope that everything would be clarified the next day filled his mind as he retired to rest. At dawn the next day, the villagers began to congregate on Don Nemesio's land, eagerly awaiting the results of the veterinarian's examinations on Hermelinda. One by one, they approached the stable, expectant for the revelation of the truth. Don Nemesio, always kind and helpful, attended to the villagers, offering them coffee and a piece of bread for breakfast as they waited. However, the villagers were aware that the attentions could not buy their goodwill. If Hermelinda was not pregnant, they would demand the money owed to them. Finally, the veterinarian emerged from the stable with an expression that did not bode well. Although he did not want to deliver the news, he knew it was necessary. An overwhelming silence seized the area as everyone waited anxiously. A brave villager stepped forward with a firm voice and asked the veterinarian what he had discovered about Hermelinda. The veterinarian replied honestly, "Indeed, the sow is not pregnant. She just has an excess of fat. It's common for people to confuse excess fat with pregnancy, but what's more surprising is what I found in her stomach." Don Nemesio, with tears in his eyes and visibly moved by the news, asked with concern what the veterinarian had found in his dear pet. The veterinarian explained, "Inside Hermelinda's stomach, I found traces of contraceptive pills. The amount I found left me thoughtful, as it's what prevented her from getting pregnant. I guarantee I found a large amount of these pills in the sow's stomach. That's why Hermelinda didn't get pregnant." The revelation left everyone stunned, especially Don Nemesio, who couldn't understand how Hermelinda had obtained those pills and why she had ingested them. Surprise and confusion filled the stable as everyone processed this strange and disconcerting revelation. The anger and indignation had deeply penetrated the small village like a whirlwind of disappointment hanging over Don Nemesio's peaceful lands. The villagers felt deceived, betrayed by a deal they believed was safe and advantageous. Voices, reproachful looks, and the bitter taste of betrayal filled the stable, where tension cut like a sharp machete. Don Nemesio, with his head low and his face downcast, faced the hurricane of criticism and accusations that rained down on him. The unjust anger of the villagers fell on his shoulders like an unbearable burden. Although innocent, he was the target of harsh words and accusing looks from his neighbors, who could not understand that he too had been a victim of a strange and unfortunate chain of events. Meanwhile, the veterinarian, with an air of calm and professionalism, desperately tried to calm the tempers. He tried to explain that in the world of science and biology, pigs share surprising similarities with humans, which had allowed Hermelinda, Don Nemesio's pampered sow, to accidentally absorb the contraceptive pills. This scientific explanation, though reasonable, fell on deaf ears in the face of the villagers' anger, who felt deceived and cheated. Lost in his thoughts, Don Nemesio withdrew from the scene momentarily. His mind was in turmoil as he tried to understand how Hermelinda, who usually didn't leave the house, had managed to ingest the contraceptive pills. The inexplicable chain of events had intrigued and worried him, and he felt the need to seek answers. Finally, with an expression of amazement and shock on his face, Don Nemesio dashed to his house. He crossed the threshold of his small house with quick steps, leaving behind a group of villagers who watched his movements attentively. Faustina, his wife, awaited him in the kitchen, where she had listened attentively to the veterinarian's explanation. Faustina's expression reflected a mixture of surprise and concern as Don Nemesio approached. She had witnessed the shocking revelation they had heard, and uncertainty filled the room. The farmer approached his wife with an anxious and urgent expression, wishing to understand the mystery behind how Hermelinda had managed to ingest the contraceptive pills. The situation was becoming increasingly complex, and the villagers' anger continued to grow in the stable, where they demanded a prompt solution to their deception and the return of their money. Don Nemesio followed his path with determination toward the couple's bedroom. He remembered that day, several months ago, when he had found Hermelinda, his beloved piglet, hiding under the bed. He crouched down carefully and checked under the bed, and there, in a corner, he discovered a chewed-up bottle of pills. Surprise and anger seized him, and he turned to his wife with an expression that mixed astonishment and anger. "Can you explain this, woman?" inquired Don Nemesio with a tense voice. "You deceived me all these years when I longed so much to have a child. You said it was a matter of luck, but all this time you were hiding this." His expression reflected a feeling of betrayal and disappointment, although his voice carried a hint of understanding. Faustina, with an expression of regret, replied sincerely, "I know I should have told you earlier, and I understand that everything that's happening may be my fault. I should have confessed to you from the beginning. You know I'll always be by your side." In the face of these words, the couple embraced, sharing a moment of forgiveness and understanding. The touching scene did not go unnoticed by the villagers, who watched from afar, still awaiting an answer from Don Nemesio regarding their money. Finally, Don Nemesio addressed the villagers with a serious expression, ready to clarify the situation. He assured them that it had all been a regrettable misunderstanding and communicated that, for the moment, he did not have the money to refund. However, he promised that in a few months, he would settle his debt. The veterinarian, who remained present, offered his support to the farmer and explained that if he kept Hermelinda away from the contraceptive pills, she would have a chance to get pregnant. Time followed its course, and the wait finally bore fruit. 4 months later, Hermelinda became pregnant and gave birth to a total of 18 piglets, which were delivered to the villagers who had paid for the first piglets that never arrived. Tranquility and joy returned to Don Nemesio's lands, who now shared the happiness of being a father to a litter of piglets, thus fulfilling his wish. Peace and understanding returned to the small town, thus ending a chapter full of surprises and intense emotions. Sometime later, Hermelinda became pregnant again. This time, Don Nemesio made a decision that filled him with happiness. Unlike the last time, he did not sell any of the piglets, choosing to keep them all to raise on his farm. However, at Faustina's request, they established a strict rule. None of the piglets would be allowed to enter the house. Only Mother Hermelinda knew that the rooms were off-limits. Amidst the daily routine with their pigs, Faustina kept another secret that she needed to share with her husband. One night, after dinner and with Hermelinda at their feet, she revealed her surprising news. "My love, I need to tell you that I have another secret." Faustina began nervously, and Don Nemesio, surprised, stared at her. "I'm pregnant," she continued. "Today I went to the doctor in town because I've been feeling unwell for the past few days, and they confirmed that, at 40 years old, I'm pregnant." The news was so joyful that a cry of joy echoed through the house, startling Hermelinda. Don Nemesio hugged his wife and spun with happiness. Finally, his dream of becoming a father had come true. The house would be filled with laughter, mischief, and, above all, love. However, the question lingering in the air was how Don Nemesio would react upon learning the truth about Hermelinda's pregnancy. Although Faustina had kept the contraceptive pills a secret, the arrival of their own child provided them with a new beginning and a family in which they would share their lives with love and joy. And so, the story of Don Nemesio and his peculiar pig Hermelinda came to a sweet and hopeful end. Their home would be filled with laughter and mischief, uniting the dreams of an eager father and a mother full of love. The story left a lesson about the power of forgiveness, understanding, and the joy of new beginnings. Thank you to everyone who watched until here. Don't forget to share your opinion in the comments. See you soon with more stories like this. A big hug and may God bless you.